Episode 4 of WandaVision has dropped on Disney+. This one got crazy, guys. There's so much to talk about in this one, so this is going to be a spoiler-filled review of WandaVision Episode 4. This episode gave us a lot this week and answered some questions, so I'm really excited to get into this. Let's get started. Starting off with how the episode begins. This episode starts out with dust particles reassembling, and you see that they are creating Geraldine. I called her Geraldine in Episode 3 review because I read the name wrong. It's actually pronounced Geraldine. We see that they are creating Geraldine, and at first I thought this was Wanda. I thought this was the birth of Geraldine that we see Wanda creating and how Wanda was going to create this reality. Then we find out that it's not just Geraldine, but her name is actually Monica Rambeau, who is the daughter of Maria Rambeau from Captain Marvel. She was Captain Marvel's friend in the movie. And it's not dust assembling because Wanda's creating her. We see that this is from the snap of Tony Stark that brought everyone back. This is the dust particles reassembling everyone in the blip. And we see that Monica Rambeau is being reassembled from the dust particles. She's blipping back into reality, and she's in a hospital, and she goes to find where her mother is, and she learns that her mother has passed away 3 years ago because it's 5 years later after Endgame. And what I really liked about this opening sequence is how they addressed the blip in the Marvel Cinematic Universe a little bit differently. The only time we've ever seen the blip is in Spider-Man Far From Home, which took a more comedic route to how everyone came back when they popped into the various places and kind of bumped into everybody. This sequence looked at the blip in a little bit more of a horrific view. We see how confused everyone is. We see the frazzledness of everybody. There's people freaking out. Everyone is questioning what's going on, what's happening. Monica is right in the middle of it. She thinks that no time has passed at all, and she goes to look for her mother. Like, it was just such a great insight to how the blip played out in various ways in this reality. And it was just a stellar way to kick off this episode. And from there, we are immediately transported to the Sword Organization headquarters, where we find out that Maria Rambeau, she was one of the founders of SWORD, and her daughter Monica Rambeau is now a part of SWORD. And we're told that the FBI has some missing cases, so Monica is sent down to meet up with Randall Park's character from Ant-Man and the Wasp, who's standing outside of a city of Westview, which isn't supposed to be there. Westview doesn't exist. And what's in Westview? Wanda and her friends, of course. So Geraldine's skill at SWORD appears to be working with drones. So she pulls out a helicopter-shaped drone, which she then sends into Westview, which gets sucked up into Wanda's vortex. And we now know that the helicopter from episode 2 was this drone that Monica was sending in to investigate Westview, and it disappears. So Monica goes up and she's reaching in, and we see Monica get sucked right into Wanda's reality. So we cut a little bit later, and SWORD has set up their organization outside of Westview, outside of Wanda's reality, and we get reintroduced to Darcy, yet again played by Kat Dennings, which was nice to see her again. And that's the thing about Marvel, is I'm not like a huge fan of the Darcy character from Thor and Thor the Dark World. I just never was attached to the character. But when we cut to her and we're reintroduced to her in the back of that van being brought in to help out with the SWORD investigation, I got a smile on my face. I was like, oh, it's Darcy, she's back. And that's just crazy that Marvel has me loving even these minute characters that I would never give a second thought about, but it brought a smile to my face to see Kat Dennings back as Darcy. So from there, we are now in the SWORD Organization, and at this point, I'm thinking, okay, we're going to cut back to WandaVision, we're going to do something here, but no, this episode focused entirely on the SWORD Organization and their investigation into what's going on with this reality that Wanda has created. And I really liked that. I liked that they took us away from the sitcom kind of format that they have set up for the past 3 episodes that we have gotten so adjusted to get snapped right back into the reality of the Marvel Cinematic Universe felt kind of jarring. And even saying that, I liked how that felt. It felt refreshing, you know, and it helped to put the pieces together of what exactly was going on. And they used this episode to explain a lot about the past few episodes. We learned about, as I mentioned before, the helicopter from episode 2, where that came from. They addressed the end of episode 1 when someone was watching them on the television, because Darcy is able to break into Wanda's kind of frequency and finds a broadcast signal coming from the reality, and she uses an old-timey TV as her eyes and ears to find out what's going on inside of that reality. So they all sit around and they watch the events develop like we did with the first 3 episodes. They basically sit down and watch the first 3 episodes of WandaVision how we did.
He's dead, right?
What am I looking at?
So you're saying the universe created a sitcom starring 2 Avengers?
So from there, Darcy figures out that maybe they can communicate to Wanda using a radio that she's seen within the show, and we find out that the voice on the radio from episode 2 was in fact Randall Park's voice asking what's going on, who's doing this to you, Wanda. And I am now fully 100% convinced Wanda is controlling this whole reality. She knows exactly where she is, what's going on, and she is the one that's keeping everybody there. And that's another interesting thing that we learned in this episode, is there are a bunch of missing people within the area, and we learn that each character on the show has an actual real life personality outside of Wanda's reality. So it seems like Wanda has all these people trapped inside of her reality. We also learned that at the end of episode 2, when that beekeeper came out of the sewer, that it was actually one of the SWORD organization guys creeping into Wanda's reality through the sewer pipes, and he's wearing a hazmat suit. But as Randall Park says in the episode, the reality that Wanda has built, whatever goes into it, then gets formed to fit the production, so to speak, of the world that Wanda has created. So there was no hazmat suits or anything back in the day, so they turn it into a beekeeper's outfit. So the episode plays out with SWORD watching the episodes, episode 1, 2, and 3, and the events progress, and eventually they get to the part where Geraldine talks about Ultron. And the image on the screen kind of cuts real quick, and the episode ends, and they're all like, what's going on? What happened there? There's nothing here. And that's when Geraldine comes flying out of that vortex and lands right in front of the SWORD organization. And what was really cool is they showed us moments before what really happened, and we really get to see Wanda's aggression come out even more than we did at the end of episode 3. And what was really cool about this is that they kept it in the 16:9 ratio. And whenever we've been in Wanda's reality in the sitcom format, they've never had it 16:9 except for when reality breaks. And the whole time that Wanda confronts Monica and she realizes, oh, you're an intruder, you're not supposed to be here, we get to see a little bit of darkness come out of Wanda. The way that she uses her powers, she's not using them in the way that she usually uses them. And you can see that she's really kind of almost fueled by anger with her powers at this point. And she blasts Monica, Geraldine, right through all the walls. She goes flying way out into the open fields and eventually out of the vortex. And when we cut back to Wanda in her room and Vision comes in, they keep it by 16:9. And I found that really interesting. And she turns around and she looks at Vision, and she doesn't see Vision as he was in her reality. She sees the dead carcass of Vision with the stone ripped out of his forehead, just like how he looked after Thanos had taken the stone out of his head in Infinity War. And that's kind of like a little glimpse into how the reality of Wanda and how the real reality is shifting back and forth, and she can't fully keep this reality, it appears, intact 100% of the time. But of course, she's able to get Vision to looking back the way Vision looks in her mind, and they sit down and they watch an episode of TV as this episode of WandaVision ends. And guys, I loved this episode of WandaVision. I thought that this episode was the best episode by far. It gave us some questions answered and also some new questions to ask. It gave us a little bit more insight as to what's going on with Wanda. If you ask me, I think that she has full control on this reality, and she knows who's in it. She created it for a purpose, and it was not a mistake. No one's doing this to her. We now know for sure that the SWORD organization has no idea what's going on. They have no part in this whatsoever. And I just gotta say that the other episodes of WandaVision, they left me hungry to see the next episode, but this episode left me starving to see episode 5. And on that note, guys, those are all my thoughts and opinions and reaction to this latest episode of WandaVision. But I want to hear from you guys, so comment down below in the comment section your thoughts and opinions on WandaVision episode 4 and what you thought of it. And guys, if you liked this video, then I have a playlist of the WandaVision episodes right up here that you can click on to catch the other episodes that I've talked about. And I will be back every week to talk about each episode of WandaVision. So if you want to join me for that ride, well, why don't you go and hit that subscribe button so you can come join me again next week. As always, guys, thank you so much for clicking on this video and checking out my channel. Once again, my name's Zachary Milne. Thank you for talking movies with me, and hope you have yourself a great day.